Hey, welcome back to METROspectives. I'm Alex Sherman, Executive Editor for Metro Magazine, and my guest today is Brian Buchanan, Transit Program Management Lead at HDR. Brian, thanks for joining me. How's it going?
Hey, well, thank you very much, Alex. It's going great.
Great, great. I understand HDR made the new position official just earlier this year in January as Program Management Lead. I'd like to start a little bit of if you can talk a little bit about yourself, talk a little bit about your background in the industry, and what kind of your duties are at HDR in your new position.
Sure. So, like most people in A&E world, I got a civil engineering degree from the University of Cincinnati way back in the late 90s now, it seems. It's been a while. But shortly after leaving college, I had an opportunity to jump into the transit world with a move from the Ohio area, which is where I was born and raised and grew up and went to school, out to Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix at that time was embarking on their first light rail system. And I had an opportunity to go out there as part of the consulting team to get started on that, being some of the first people on that project, from started at the very beginning of that project in the planning phase. And I got this bug in me that's like, hey, this is really interesting work. I've always been kind of a train guy and in the background, understood. And it was really interesting, this cross section between railroads and streets and transit and all that. So I worked my way up through several different positions. I was in the private sector to start with out in Phoenix. And then I jumped over to the public sector when they started to grow that agency and implement the light rail system. And ultimately, I left that agency as the lead executive in charge of capital for Valley Metro. And we cut the ribbon in 2008 for that great 20-mile light rail system that they've since expanded and is great, doing great things for the community of Phoenix, Mesa, Tempe, and the surrounding area out there. I then had an opportunity to take that same perspective and go to San Antonio, Texas, working there with a great GM by the name of Keith Parker, and tried to get a streetcar program up and going. Unfortunately, we failed in that. We lost some political well-being and some of the things, that are very endeared to program management, and became the lead executive there too for capital, part of the executive team, building that. We did end up implementing the first BRT project in San Antonio, Texas, as part of that program, and a bunch of other things, just a lot of community passenger improvements, things that made the bus system the greatest bus system it could be, just based on funding. But then there I also had a real deep introduction into what I would call funding and politics, and this cross section of the technical side of how projects get done, and then there's the public side and all the different things in the Rubik's Cube
Right.
that need to come together. And that's kind of this program management aspect of my career now, is trying to link all those together and bring them all around to get something built. And then this opportunity came with a phone call one day to my cell phone from HDR and saying, "Hey, Brian, we're interested in pursuing this job up in Austin, Texas, called Project Connect. Are you interested in leaving the public sector, coming over to the private sector, and becoming our program manager for that project?" And I said yes. I've known HDR for a while. They worked. I was their client at some point.
Yeah.
I knew the culture of HDR. I really felt comfortable with the people at HDR. We're an employee-owned company. We got that culture of everybody's in everybody's business because everybody cares. And as employee owners of 14,000 of us. So I joined the HDR, and I made the commute from San Antonio, Texas to Austin, Texas, about 3 to 4 days a week for
Wow.
5 years, to bring up the Project Connect program there in Austin. I was program manager with my team, along with Capital Metro, and then ultimately Austin Transit Partnership. That's now the implementing arm of that program. and had a great time working there. At the very cusp of bringing that program along, we built the referendum package, helped get it passed there, worked on the funding, and then ultimately the selection of all the people to help bring that program to fruition and where they are today, which is in a great position, heading towards a full funding grant agreement in the CIG program and moving that program along very quickly. So that's my nutshell. And then recently, like you mentioned, got the opportunity to take on HDR's program management lead for transit. My job here is to continue to get program management out there, talk about all the different services that we have available, from planning to finance to strategic communications, to technical side. It's just the nuts and bolts of designing a program like this. And in selling that, and then also talking to clients and being that trusted advisor, being somebody that can sit there and have those conversations with executives and stuff and have real deep conversations and talk about risks and what's needed, organizational charts, organizational changes, policies, procedures, and all that stuff it takes to implement these big programs. So that's my job. It's one of the greatest jobs I've ever had, and I hope HDR continues to give me this opportunity.
Well, great. I mean, I really appreciate, gosh, a vast background and the mix of public and private, and I think it makes it ideal. Kind of talk about, program management and some of the things going on in the industry. Can we talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges transit agencies face today in managing large, complex capital programs?
Yeah, so I think, it's kind of twofold. It's like most things in today's society, everything's visible. So, when you're out there doing that work or doing public involvement, just bringing everybody along in the program. Everything you do is out there in the public, but everything touches everybody else. And that's kind of my analogy of the Rubik's Cube. For those of us that are old enough to remember what that was, as you turned one side, it changed another side, and this side changed that side, trying to solve it all to get to the correct answer. And that's what program management is, and that's what these projects are. A lot of people call a lot of transit projects, other infrastructure projects with a little bit of transit on top of it, right?
Mhm.
So they become infrastructure upgrade projects, utility upgrade projects, mobility upgrade projects, and things like that. And the transit helps facilitate those improvements as well. So I think, the biggest challenge is staying focused. Remember that the transit agency is there to try to bring better mobility for the people of the community. Don't try to solve everybody's issues with your project. Sometimes you can get bogged down in other things that really aren't in your core mission. And make sure you have that core mission and values and have everybody agree to that at the beginning, because as the programs advance and they mature, you're going to have some tough discussions about things, so most definitely. And you want to be able to root yourself back on what were those core missions, what were those core things that we were looking at. And then there's the whole geopolitical and all the different stuff that happens. These projects tend to take a very long time to go through their process, so there's a lot of opportunity for outside influence to occur in these projects. So just building up risk registers, trying to have those conversations before they happen, so you at least have an idea of how to react when they do happen. And just, having that open and honest conversation that a trusted advisor or program manager has with their client, I think is one of the best approaches to try to make these projects as tolerable as possible. They're going to be tough, but you want to have that relationship in order to bring it forward and get it done. So.
Yeah. And how much would you say your public sector experience really helps you in your private sector experience now, and kind of understanding that role from the transit agency perspective, from the management perspective? How has that helped you communicate and understand what they need in executing these projects?
Yeah, I think that's a great aspect to have that background, because you understand where your client's coming from when they're asking some of these questions and stuff like that. They have people they need to report to too. It's not just the black and white that's in our contract, deliver this. There's always going to be those one-off, those asks, those political needs, those things that come up, those outside influences that occur, and just being having walked in those shoes a little bit, you have an understanding that yes, this is important. We need to help get this through. We need to help solve this issue and things like that. Even though it's not something that's in the normal course of designing a project or something like that. You understand that there's a reason. You can probably figure out what that reason is, but they need an answer and they need to get it. And it's important that it come from a trusted individual and somebody that's been there before. But I will say this, if you've seen one transit property, you've seen one transit property. Everybody's different. They all act a little different, but at least getting in there and having that somewhat being able to talk that language a little bit and understand the governance and how things are done and policies and procedures and board meetings and approvals and procurement and all that stuff that we get into, I think makes a great program manager.
Yeah. And from HDR, from that perspective, how has the company or the firm adapted its program management approach to help clients kind of manage supply chain volatility, cost escalation, the key stakeholder question as well.
Yeah, so I think we've become a lot more proactive, I think, in our approach to dealing with things. It used to be this very step through process. 30% design, 60% design, 90% design, construction documents, bid it, done, deal with the contractor, things like that.
Right.
Now we're doing things like building risk registers, looking at Monte Carlo financial simulations, looking at geopolitical, stress testing the supply chain, for steel and goods and services. And, like today's issue is, RAM and computer parts are very, very expensive. And that goes into signal systems and all this different type of stuff. So it's approaching it in a today, what's going on today, but what can we think about in the future and be proactive? And let's have those conversations once again, like I said, before they happen. That way, it may come as a surprise, but it's not a full surprise. But it's like we've talked about this, or we've talked about something very close to this as part of the program. And I think doing that. And then the other thing is, I think collaboration. And that not only goes between the program manager and the agency, but also the collaborative contracting models we're looking at nowadays, where we bring the actual construction contractor onto the program much earlier than when we're ready to go to construction. A construction professional can give you great insight to constructability, phasing, scheduling, stakeholder issues, and things like that we as professionals may have an idea about. But once again, we're not the ones out there with the fun, heavy equipment that get to do this every single day. These are the real people that can give us real insight, real lessons learned, or what they've done elsewhere to really help try to minimize these impacts and also make them a partner. Contracting used to be us versus them and things like that. I think a lot more of the successful programs nowadays are built around that collaborative nature where you're all sitting around talking about issues and things like that. It's not the client sitting on one side of the table, the contractor sitting on the other side of the table. Everybody's mixed together and everybody's business. And I think those are just the way that people get projects done, hopefully more efficiently and with less disruption. So,
Yeah. And it's not, it's dependent's not the right word, but you guys really are counting on each other to make this project successful. They're leaning on you for your expertise. You're leaning on them to kind of really get a sense of what's going on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If we all succeed, if one succeed, in order for one of us to succeed, we all must succeed, right?
Right.
And there is no one person that is going to bring the whole thing in on time, on budget, on schedule, all that. It's a real team approach, and it takes everybody from the project accountant all the way up to getting bills paid, to the procurement people to get contracts out in a timely manner, to legal, getting procurement documents ready to go, and then the design engineers, not only doing their design, but responding to changes in the field. Changes in the field happen all the time. And just understanding the priority and what the ultimate goal is. The ultimate goal is to get that infrastructure built so that the community can use it, right? And if we all go into that approach, I think those are the best projects that try to get things done quickly, efficiently, and as a team.
Right. And having been in the public sector, you're probably well suited to answer this question, but what can you say is a misconception agencies have about program management that you wish you could kind of change from HDR's perspective, or just just kind of take that hurdle out when they're approaching these projects?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's a vision that a program manager creates these big, beautiful dashboards and these 30-page reports every month and has all these fancy Excel spreadsheets with all these numbers in it and all these nice, Gantt charts and things like that. Absolutely, a great program manager has all that stuff. But a great program manager also has a lot of strategic thinking behind it. Like the Rubik's Cube, it's always nice to turn it, but know what that might impact or how can we do this in a different way. The engineering answer may not be the stakeholder answer, and bringing all that together. A good program manager helps bring everybody together in a cohesive manner to have those types of conversations. And if you're hiring a program manager for all that front stuff, and you're not getting that strategic value out of that, and a strategic conversation and strategic, insight and lessons learned and all that, I really don't think an entity is using a program manager for what they should be used for. Even helping with procurements. Procurements used to be one of those things that was held sacred inside the agency and things like that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that says a program manager can't help you write scope, help you with terms and conditions, help you with all that stuff to get that stuff out the door and get other things on. They obviously can't work it in the procurement or respond to the procurement, but they can help you get it out. And we're finding procurements are becoming a long lead item, a critical path item these days, and just allowing your program manager to help with that aspect can probably speed up a lot of things that are going on out there today.
Yeah, and you would think that you would be well suited, having worked with other agencies through their procurements as well, to see something that worked for them could apply. Like you said, if you've seen one, you've seen one, right? But also, here's something that could work, and maybe something you can look at to determine if it works for you or not.
I think the agencies that are succeeding today are open to new ideas. They're stress testing some of the norms that have been done over the years, and asking the why did we do it this way conversation, and having the conversations with the funding partners such as the Federal Transit Administration and things like that, and just being proactive in that conversation. And I think they're getting a long way. I can definitely tell you that has been some of the success in that Austin program that I just came off of, was just thinking about it and maybe trying it a little different way. You don't have to be on the bleeding edge, but maybe you can tweak it a little bit and it works a little bit better, and taking that to the FTA, giving them your business case. And, they've been fortunate enough to have some of those conversations come back and say, hey, that's a good idea. Let's give it a try. And I think people respect that and offer that out there as a way to make things better. Not circumvent anything, but just how can we make this better, and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. That is something that's probably changed in public transit in the public transit industry the most is sort of the rigidity from the past, right? I think people have a little bit more flexibility and are more open to ideas and technologies and that sort of thing than they've ever been previously.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes from everything from, does the collaborative contracting models fit with the current CIG program steps to get to move through that program? That's something that is being looked at, all the way to how do we deliver these programs nowadays with BIM and information technology and AI. I hate to use that word, but it's affecting our industry like everything else. And being able to test, adapt, validate in a public sector environment is a little tough, because at the end of the day, there's a customer on the end of that trip that's needing you to supply that trip in a safe and efficient manner. And so sometimes it's hard to work with the public sector. I remember the days when we were rolling out real-time information systems and things like that. And if that message board didn't have it down to the minute, we were getting phone calls and customer service. And it's kind of like, okay, we're trying this out, you guys. We have to get everything synced in and stuff like that. But so real live testing is an interesting thing, but I think agencies are open to it. I think our customers are getting more open to it, kind of as society moves to that model a little bit on everything in general. But at the end of the day, transit's there to provide a safe and reliable mode choice for people. And that's what the transit system should be aiming for through its existing service and any of its capital improvement projects. So.
Yeah. Well, Brian, thanks again for joining me. I appreciate it. Looking ahead, what capabilities should transit agencies build internally to manage increasingly complex program better?
Yeah, so we've talked about the dwindling workforce, right? The baby boomer retirement and all that's going on not only in transit agencies but across the economic chain. I think it's essential for transit agencies to let their leaders shine, give them opportunities to grow, make them a little uncomfortable so that they get that experience and that they're allowed to fail to learn, basically, in a standpoint. But also, transit agencies still need to try to maintain that core knowledge base, because at the end of the day, program managers usually go away, consultants go away, and you're left as an owner to own and operate the system that you've brought on board online. So making sure you have somebody that understands kind of the cradle to grave, that person that understands why this decision was made, why that was put off, and things like that. So just, treating staff and providing staff opportunities for growth, but letting them remember that, you're really important to us because of this, because you helped us implement this program, and just, making the transit profession the best they possibly can. So.
Well, great, Brian. I appreciate the insights. Is there anything you'd like to add? Maybe something I should ask, or something you'd like to say in closing?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity. I think program management is an up and coming aspect, and it will hopefully be able to partner with some of our transit clients to bring great programs and projects on board. So thank you, Alex.
Great. Thanks. I appreciate your time again, Brian.
All right. Thank you.